Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome you to today's session. Today we will be covering Unit 9, A Good Education. So, let me walk you through today's objectives. So, by the end of this unit, you will be able to read the text about Charlotte Bronte and her novel Jane Eyre, write a summary of Jane Eyre or any story, listen to discussion on changing schools, agreeing and disagreeing on an opinion, practice speaking and expressing agreeing and disagreeing, or agreement and disagreement. And the language focus for today is gonna be past simple passive, past simple and past perfect active form. And as for the personal skills, or how can you develop your personal skills, you will be able to improve your communication skills and how to support your opinion with reasons. So, for example, when I give an opinion, I have to give a reason for it or justify it. And as for the life skills, we have different ways of learning, for example. So, let's start with the new vocabulary as usual. Cruel. Cruel, it's as you can see in the picture, unkind and hurting others. Governess. So the governess is the woman who teaches children in their home. Housekeeper. She's a servant who looks after the whole house. Orphan. So the orphan is a child whose parents are dead. Servant. He's a person, he or she is a person who works for people in their house. Boarding school. Boarding school is the place where children live and study. So they study and live as well. So this is what we call boarding school. Bullying, the use of strength or power to frighten or hurt someone who is a bit weaker. That's what we call in Arabic al-tanamur. Okay. So choose the correct answer from A, B, C, or D. So let's get some practice. When she was 9, she was sent to a or an dot school where she lived and studied. Board, boarding, abroad, holding. So think about the answer and feel free to take down some notes, or if you want to type in the chat. Number 2, a or an dot is not good member of society. Number A, bully. Number B, governess. Number C, orphan. Number D, author. Number 3, having lessons at home was known as dots. Children didn't go to school but learned at home. Free education, boarding, school, school education, home schooling. Number 4, dots must be felt by all members of society as it affects us all. Cooperating, imagination, thinking, bullying. So think about the answer. Last but not least, number 5, the poor girl's parents died when she was a little baby. She is A or N dots. Teacher, orphan, governess, widow. Now, if you are done with the answers, let's check the right answer together. So when she was 9, she was sent to A or N school where she lived and studied. Of course, boarding school. Number 2, A or N is not a good member of society. Of course, bully, because bully is the person himself. It could be it means the person or the verb. Okay, so you can be bullying other people, or you as a person, I can describe him or her as a bully. Having lessons at home was known as, of course, home schooling. Number four, dots must be felt by all members of society as it affects us all. This is what we call bullying. So we need to be aware of this issue because it affects all of us. Number five, the poor girl's parents died when she was a little baby. She is A or N, orphan, of course. All right, so let's check this exercise, and you can find it in your workbook, page 98. This is exercise 1. Choose the correct answers to complete the sentences. Mr. and Mrs. Osman employed a governess or housekeeper to teach their children at home. So choose whether governess or housekeeper. And again, keep it in your notes. Number 2, Hanya never knew her parents because she is A or N. Governess or orphan? Choose one of them. Number 3, that bully was very cruel or strange to the smaller boys, so they told the teacher about it. Number 4, the housekeeper or orphan showed the guest to her room. Okay, so let's check the answers together. Mr. and Mrs. Osman employed a governess to teach their children at home, because the governess is the one who teaches children, whereas the housekeeper, he or she helps the people in their home with the housework, of course. Number 2, Hanya never knew her parents because she is A or N, of course it's N, orphan, she's an orphan. That bully was very cruel, so we describe the behavior as being cruel. Number 4, the housekeeper showed the guest to her room. Of course, this is the job of a housekeeper. All right. Now, you're going to read the summary of the book Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte and think about this question. What do you know about Charlotte Bronte? Of course, this is the text, and I have something interesting for you. It's gonna be in a form of a video. You can watch it, and you can read as well the text. Okay, so while watching the video or reading the text, you can follow the text or the transcript in your book. Think about the question that we were talking about. What do you know about Charlotte Bronte, or what's the main information that you get out of the text or out of the video, so to speak?
Jane Eyre, Charlotte Bronte, was born in England in 1816. She and her two sisters all became famous authors. Charlotte Bronte's most famous book is Jane Eyre. It was written in 1847. Jane Eyre was an orphan who lived with her cousins and her wealthy aunt, Mrs. Reed. The family was unkind and they did not want Jane to live with them. Jane was sent away to school. Jane was happy to go to Lowood School, but the owner, Mr. Brocklehurst, was very cruel, so the students lived unhappy lives. Finally, cruel Mr. Brocklehurst was told to leave the school. 6 years later, Jane became a teacher at Lowood School. After 2 years, Jane decided to apply for a job as a governess. Governesses were often employed by rich families. She started to teach a young French girl called Adele at a big house called Thornfield Hall. The owner of the house was Mr. Rochester. Jane enjoyed her new job and became friends with Mrs. Fairfax, the kind housekeeper. One night, there was a fire at Thornfield Hall. Jane saved Mr. Rochester from the fire. He said that the fire was started by a servant called Grace, but Grace did not lose her job. Jane did not understand, but she thought that there was a secret in the house. Jane decided to leave Thornfield Hall, but she could not forget it. Jane Eyre.
Okay, so what do you know about Charlotte Bronte, or what's the main information that you get out of the reading comprehension or the video? So Charlotte Bronte, she's born in the through 1816 to 1855, and she was an English novelist. So the novelist is the person who writes novels, and she's the eldest of three sisters. Her sisters is Emily, or Emily and Anne, were also poets and novelists. So they are three sisters, and they are all novelists and poets. They lived in Yorkshire in north of England and attended different schools as well as being taught at home. So they were applying the idea of homeschooling. They all worked as teachers and governesses. Last but not least, Charlotte Bronte in particular, she wrote two other novels, but Jane Eyre was her most famous and has been made into many films. And personally, Jane Eyre is one of my ever best novels. Okay, so read the summary of Jane Eyre quickly and which phrase best explains what the story is about. So if you go back to the reading comprehension and think about it, so we have like three summaries. You need to choose the best of them. And as we said earlier, you can find in the reading comprehension question, for example, in the exam, you might have a question asking you about the best title or the best summary. That means you need to get the main idea of the text and also get some details and see which is the best answer. So number A, the importance of kindness and honesty. Again, we are looking for the summary or the best summary of Jane Eyre. The importance of kindness and honesty. Number B, the importance of having a lot of money. Number C, the importance of working with a rich family. So again, the best summary of Jane Eyre basically is the importance of kindness and honesty. Now we have a letter. I want you to read this letter that Charlotte Bronte wrote to her friend Ellen, and think about this question. Do you think that Charlotte likes her new job? Why or why not? So again, we have a letter, and this letter is written by Charlotte Bronte to her friend Ellen. And we want to, after reading the letter, we need to come to the conclusion whether Charlotte Bronte likes her new job or not. And if you say yes, say why. And if you say no, say why. So why or why not? Okay? Dear Ellen, I told you some time ago that I wanted to get a good job. I'm glad to say that I have found one as a governess, and I'm quite happy. The house is not very large, but it's very comfortable and the gardens are huge. Although I earn less money than in my previous job, I'm working with kind, friendly people. I have two pupils, an 8-year-old girl and a 6-year-old boy. My job as a governess can be very difficult because children have so much energy. I just hope I will not become ill trying to keep them under control and make them happy. Well, I must continue with my work. I hope to see you soon. Kind regards, Charlotte. So she wrote this letter telling Ellen, her friend, about her job, about how much money does she earn, and so on and so forth. So after reading the letter, do you think that she likes her job? Personally, I think she likes her job. So she likes her job because she says, of course, as we mentioned earlier, it depends on your personal uh, point of view. If you think that she doesn't like it, that's fine, but you have to say why. You have to justify your answer. Justify means you need to mention the reason, okay? She likes her job because she says she's quite happy and the house is comfortable, the people are kind and friendly. However, she earns less money than her previous job and it can be very difficult. Well, at the end of the day, she likes the job anyway. Okay, we need to think about these questions. Again, based on the letter that we read, who will Charles be teaching in her new job? Do you remember? If we go back to the letter, she said, I'll be teaching two pupils, or I have two pupils, an 8-year-old girl and 6-year-old boy. So she's teaching two children. So Charlotte will be teaching two children. Number two, what is Charlotte worried about in her new job? She hopes she will not become ill trying to keep the children under control and make them happy because they need more energy, okay? The following two questions are what we call critical thinking questions, which means there is no model answer for them. It depends on your point of view. For example, do you think it is important to work with kind, friendly people? Why or why not? Do you think this is important? Again, personally, I think it's so important because it creates like a friendly atmosphere at work. So this is very important. Number four, do you think Charlotte will succeed in her new job? Why or why not? Again, you need to say why. Okay. Personally, I think she's going to succeed because she likes her job. She likes the people. She likes uh, the place where she lives and the people who she is dealing with. So I think she's going to be very successful. All right. So here we have a number of sentences taken from the summary of the novel, and I want you to underline or highlight the past simple passive verbs. Jane was sent away to school. So what is the past simple passive? Was sent. Number two, Mr. Brocklehurst was told to leave the school. Again, where is the past simple passive? Was told. Number three, governesses were often employed by rich families. Again, were often employed. The fire was started by a servant called Grace. So what is the form? Was started. So if you notice that this is what we call past simple passive. What do we mean by passive? That means we don't know the doer or the person who does the action, okay, or did the action. So the past simple passive, simply and basically, is to we use it to form the past simple passive. We use the verb to be in the past simple form, and then add the past participle. So, for example, Jane Eyre was written in 1847. So, was is verb to be. It could be was or were, plus the past participle of the main verb. So, we use by plus the agent or the person who did the action. when we want to show the doer of the action. For example, governesses were often employed by rich families. So I can say, for example, the glass was broken by Ahmed. Okay, I want to say, or I want to mention that Ahmed, he's the doer. He's the person who did the action. So I can add by plus the agent or the person at the end. Okay, so this is some sort of wrapping up the past passive. So in order to form the passive, we use verb to be, of course, was or were, plus past participle. So for example, here you have like a comparison between the active and the passive. Charles Bronte wrote Jane Eyre. Simply, we start with the object. So Jane Eyre, again, it's singular, so was written by Charles Bronte. Mrs. Reed locked Jane in the blue room. So Jane is the object, so we start with Jane. Jane was locked in the blue room, and so on and so forth. Usually, we use the passive to talk about the action rather than the agent. The agent, we said, is the person who did the action. So when we use the passive, we focus more on the action, not the doer, okay? Many sentences with the passive verbs do not need an agent because we don't know or do not need to know who did the action because it's not important or we all know it. For example, let me clarify it in Arabic a little bit. So for example, in the passive form, المبني للمجهول احنا we don't mention، احنا مش بنذكر الفاعل الأصلي ببساطة شديدة، يا إما هو مش مهم قوي إن احنا نقوله or ممكن يكون معروف عندنا كلنا. يعني مثلا لما يجي أقول a lot of bridges were built for example. في كباري كتيرة جدا اتبنت في البلد. معروف مين اللي بنى الكباري دي؟ الحكومة، the government. So I don't need to mention. Or the action, or sorry, the doer, الفاعل نفسه, is not that important. Okay, we don't need to mention it. So basically, we focus on the action or the verb, not the doer or the person who did it. Again, one of the common mistakes that we always do, that we make, sorry, Jane Eyre was written by Charles Bronte. Some of you, they wrote, for example, Jane Eyre written. We have to put verb to be. You cannot form any passive verb without verb to be. So we have to put was or were plus past participle. Okay, so here we have a number of verbs: ask, give, send, take, and teach. And we need to complete the sentences with the past simple passive. So children from rich families, dot, at home by governess. Again, feel free to take down some notes and let's check the answers together later on. Number 2, I got a lovely big cake on my last birthday. Number 3, the books got into the classroom by a few of the boys. Number 4, in 19th century England, many children got to boarding school. Number 5, we got to help clean the garden outside the school. Let's check the answers together. Children from rich families were taught. Again, the children is plural, so we said were taught. Number 2, I was given a lovely big cake on my birthday. Number 3, the books were taken into the classroom by a few of the boys. Number 4, In the 19th century England, many children were sent to boarding school. Number 5, we were asked to help clean the garden outside the school. Again, choose the correct answer. Jane Eyre sent or was sent to live at Lowood School. Number 2, a brave young man saved or was saved the old man from the fire. Number 3, Ahmed was told not to arrive late. Number 4, unluckily, my car didn't repair or wasn't repaired yesterday. Number 5, Adele was taught by Jane Eyre. Are you ready to check the answers? Here we go. Jane Eyre was sent to live at Lowood School because she is the one who was sent. Someone else sent her to live at Lowood School. A brave young man saved the old man from the fire because the brave young man is the doer or the agent, is the doer of the action. So the brave man saved the old man. So the brave young man is the subject and the old man is the object. Number 3, Ahmed was told not to arrive late. Number 4, unluckily, my car didn't repair or wasn't repaired. Of course, wasn't repaired because the car is not going to repair itself, of course. So someone else repaired it. So wasn't repaired yesterday. Number 5, Adele was taught by Jane Eyre because Jane Eyre is the main subject and Adele is the object. The delicious cake dots by everyone at the party. Again, choose the correct answer from A, B, C, or D. Was eaten, ate, did eat, eats. Number 2, the movies dots by a famous filmmaker last year were directed, did direct, and directs. My homework dots before dinner yesterday was finished, finishes, and so on. The science experiments dots successfully by the students were carried out, and so on. The lost puppy dots by a kind stranger this morning was found, and so on. So let's check the answers together. The delicious cake was eaten by everyone at the party. Of course, was eaten because the people ate the cake. Number 2, the movies were directed by a famous filmmaker. My homework was finished. The science experiments were carried out. The lost puppy was found by a kind stranger. Of course, as you can see, in all of these sentences, we used verb to be plus past participle because, again, they are passive. Let's move on to lesson 2, and we're going to cover some sort of collocations. And what do we mean by collocations? Collocations are a group of words that usually go together. So let's get some examples. Lose touch with. What do you mean by lose touch with? To stop having contact. So you don't contact this person anymore. Make friends. What do you mean by make friends? Start a friendship with someone. Do an online course, which means study online. Keep in touch with. to continue to have contact with. So you contact with this person. Choose the correct answer. If you find yourself drifting apart from old classmates, you might say you have made friends, do online course, lost touch with, kept in touch with. Again, think about the answer and take down some notes. Number 2, joining a club is a great way to lose touch with, or make friends, or do an online course, or kept in touch with. Number 3, if you want to learn a new skill, you could, again, choose one of the collocations. Number 4, social media platforms can be helpful for, think about it. All right, so let's check the answers together. If you find yourself drifting apart from old classmates, what do you mean by drifting apart? Because you're going far away from them. So you lost touch with them, of course. So when you lose touch with someone, this is a natural collocation to use when describing becoming or being distant from someone. Joining a club is a great way to make friends, of course. So when you make friends, you are forming new friendships. Number 3, if you want to learn a new skill, you could do an online course. Of course, this is like a course you can take online or on the internet. Number 4, social media platforms can be helpful for keeping in touch or kept in touch with someone. So keep in touch with someone to stay connected with this person. All right. So we have a text and we need to think about these the following questions. We need to think about it. So in the 19th century, many of the children from rich or important families had lessons with a teacher who came to their homes instead of them going to school. These days, it is quite unusual. So they are talking about homeschooling. So why do you think it was the children of rich or important people who had lessons at home? Can you think about it? I'm trying to guess why. Number 2, in the 19th century, do you think there were more or fewer schools than there are today? So do you think in the past, especially in the 19th century, there were a lot of schools or less schools than today? Number 3, do you think learning at home today helps students get a good education? Why or why not? Okay, so let's check some of the answers. So if you go back to the first question, why do you think it was the children of rich or important people who had lessons at home? Simply because teachers were expensive to hire. They get high salaries. Number 2, in the 19th century, do you think there were more or fewer schools than there are today? Of course, there were fewer schools, a little bit fewer schools. Number 3, do you think learning at home, of course, it depends on your opinion. Do you think that good education, it can take place at home? So for example, if you are staying at home and you are learning like online, is this helpful or not? Personally, I would go with hybrid learning. What do you mean by hybrid learning? الهايبريد learning اللي هو التعليم المدمج. أنا بدمج الاونلاين والفيس تو فيس. يعني ممكن ادرس حاجات اونلاين وممكن ادرس حاجات فيس تو فيس، لانه الفيس تو فيس هي فيها interaction، في تفاعل وفي we keep in touch with other people. So that's why I think we can, personally, I would go for hybrid learning to combine both face-to-face education, or when you go to school and deal with your colleagues and classmates, and also online teaching and learning. Okay, so this is a listening task. You can find this dialogue or this text in your workbook, page 99. So listen and complete the sentences from 1 to 7. Then put the events in order, again from E to G, in the correct order. So here you have two tasks to do. First of all, you complete the sentences, and then you put them in order. Okay, so let's start.
Workbook, Unit 9, Lesson 2, Exercise 3. Listen and complete the sentences 1 to 7. Then put the events A to G into the correct order.
My name is Kareem, and I love to read. I had read another one of Charlotte Bronte's books, called Villette, before I decided to buy a copy of Jane Eyre. They didn't have it in my local bookshop, so I kept going back to check. Finally, I saw it on the shelf, but then an old man took it. I spoke to the owner of the bookshop, and I explained that I had waited 3 weeks for the book to arrive. He said there was nothing he could do, but then I heard someone laughing. The old man said he had lost his copy of the book many years ago, before I was born, so he didn't mind waiting a little longer. He let me buy it, and when I got home, I knew I had been very lucky.
Okay, so let's check the answers together. So my name is Kareem, and I love to read. I had read another one of Charles Bronte's books called Villette before I decided to buy a copy of Jane Eyre. Number 2, they didn't have it in my local bookshop, so I kept going back and back to check. Number 3, finally I saw it on the shelf. I saw it. Okay, he found it, sorry. And number 4, I spoke to the owner of the bookshop, and I explained that I had waited 3 weeks for the book to arrive. Number 5, he thought there was nothing he could do, but so number 5, he said there were nothing he could do, but I heard someone laughing. Number 6, the old man said he had lost his copy of the book many years ago. Number 7, he let me buy it when I got home, and I knew I had been very lucky. Okay, so these are the model answers. Feel free to take a screenshot if you want, or you can pause the video if you're watching the recording. And this is the right order. Okay, so moving from the past simple passive, we're going to move to another grammar point or language focus. But before we start, I want you to watch this video, and I want you to highlight the tenses in each sentence. Okay, so feel free to take down some notes of the tenses of the verbs you may encounter while watching. Okay, so let's start.
How was your date last night, Jake?
It turned out okay, but I had some problems along the way.
Why? What happened?
It started when I was getting ready to meet Anne. After I had brushed my teeth, I used some mouthwash to make sure my breath would be extra fresh. At first, I was fine, though it was a strong taste. But the taste got more intense as I rinsed my teeth, and my mouth felt like it was on fire. Then I looked at the bottle I had used. I realized I had rinsed my mouth with aftershave instead of mouthwash. The mouthwash and aftershave bottles were right next to each other. I quickly rinsed my mouth and used the mouthwash from the right bottle this time.
You must have been pretty distracted to make that kind of mistake. Did everything else go okay?
Unfortunately, no. I went to get dressed and realized I had left my best shirt in the washer. I had meant to put it in the dryer before I started getting ready. I went to get it from the washer, but my mother had already put it in the dryer. I was relieved until I took it out. The shirt had shrunk.
Oh no. Did you find something else to wear?
I was running short on time, so I threw on a different shirt and ran out the door. I got to the restaurant in the nick of time. I sat at a table to wait for Anne to arrive. After I had waited for a few minutes, I realized I had put my shirt on inside out. This had never happened to me before last night. I went to the bathroom to fix it. When I came back, a waiter had given my table to someone else. I told a server what had happened, but he said I would have to wait for another table. After about 10 minutes, I told them that I had waited long enough. They finally gave me a new table, apologizing that they had made a mistake.
Did Anne show up?
No, I began to get frustrated. I had been sitting at the table for about 15 minutes when Anne called me. She sounded upset. She said that she had waited for me for over 20 minutes. She had left the restaurant and was in her car, about to go home.
How come you never saw her?
I asked her where she had sat at Taqueria Loca, and she sounded surprised. She had been at Taqueria San Jose. Since I already had a table, I told her to come to Taqueria Loca.
Then Anne made it to the restaurant, right?
Yes, she did. After 10 minutes had passed, Anne finally showed up. When I saw her, I felt the wait had been worth it. We stayed at the restaurant for a long time, eating and talking.
Did you have much in common?
Yes, we did. It turns out she had listened to most of the same music I did when I was a teenager. She had even played on a basketball team, just like me.
Great minds think alike. I'm glad the rest of the night went smoothly.
Not exactly.
Oh no. Did something else go wrong?
After we had eaten, I went to the men's room. When I looked at myself in the mirror, I saw that I had several...
Okay, so he had several large pieces of cilantro in his teeth. Okay, so as you can tell from the video, we are focusing mainly on the past simple and past perfect. So let's start with the past simple tense. As usual, we used we use the past simple tense to talk about completed actions in the past, and it focuses on a single event or a series of events at a specific time. And again, it doesn't indicate any order of past events if they happen close together. So basically, if it's past actions, that's completed actions, or past habits, for example. So as for the form, we simply add D or ED, or simply sometimes IED, for example. Or this is if it's regular verb like play, played, walk, walked. As for the irregular verbs like eat, ate, sleep, slept, and so on. And we have the auxiliary or helping verbs like verb to be, verb to have, verb to do. Of course, they change altogether. So these are some of the examples of past simple tense. I wrote a letter to my friend yesterday. This is a completed action. Okay. We visited the museum last week. Again, it's completed action at a specific time. She cooked dinner every night. This is like a habit, okay, or habitual action in the past. So to wrap up, we use the past simple to talk about something that happened once in the past. For example, I met my wife in 1983. We went to Spain for our holidays. They got home very late last night. So this is something that happened once in the past. Or habits or habitual actions in the past that happened, or actions that happened several times in the past. When I was a boy, I walked a mile to school every day. We swam a lot while we were on holiday. They always enjoyed visiting their friends, and so on. Last but not least, something that was true for some time in the past. I lived abroad for 10 years. He enjoyed being a student. She played a lot of tennis when she was younger. Let's move on to the past perfect tense. So the past perfect is made from the verb had plus past participle. I had finished the work. She had gone. So basically we have verb to have in the past, which is had plus past participle. So we use the past perfect for something that started in the past and continued up to a given time in the past. So for example, when George died, he and Anne had been married for nearly 50 years. She didn't want to move. She had lived in Liverpool all her life. So basically, when we come to the past perfect, we're talking about order of events. So one of the events happened before another event. So for example, someone broke into our house. When we arrived home, we discovered that someone had broken into the house because he broke the house first and then we came. So the first action is in the past perfect and the other one is in the past simple. So we use the past perfect to show that the first event finished before the second event. So let's wrap up. So the past simple, like want, wanted, study, studied, play, played, go, went. So we use it to express actions that started and ended in the past or past habits. We traveled to London a year ago. I went to a new school last week. My father used to walk to school when he was young, and so on and so forth. So whether completed actions in the past or habits in the past. The past perfect, again, the form is had plus past participle. So we use the past participle to refer to an action that happened before another action. So Jane went to Thornfield Hall after they had offered her a job there. So they offered the job and then she came to Thornfield. We didn't reach a solution to the problem until we had discussed it or we had met to talk about it. So let's choose the best answer. When I woke up, the sun dots already risen. Number 2, we that museum last year, so we decided to skip it this time. Number 3, he does his homework by the time the teacher collected it. Number 4, by the time they reached the airport, the plane dots already departed. Number 5, she dots a letter before she went to bed. Okay. So when I woke up, the sun okay, so had arrived because it happened a bit earlier. Number 2, we visit. Okay, so we need to get the form. We visited the museum last year, so we decided to skip it this time. We had visited, of course, had visited because it's a completed action before another action. Number 3, his homework, of course, he hadn't finished his homework by the time the teacher collected it. It's again unfinished action. So the teacher, he didn't finish the homework first, and then the teacher collected the homework. So that's why we say he hadn't finished his homework by the time the teacher collected it. By the time they reached the airport, the plane had left. Number 5, she a letter before she went to bed. She wrote a letter before she went to bed because this is like a completed action. Okay, so let's move on to lesson 3. So as we mentioned at the very beginning, we were talking about agreement and disagreement, or agreeing and disagreeing. So we have a number of expressions that we use to agree or disagree. So for example, if the phrase or the sentence, if it's used for agreement, we put A. If it's for disagreement, we put D. Okay? So that's true. This is A, agreement. I would say the opposite, which means I disagree with you, which is D. That's why it's D. So again, to make this point clear, so we have A or D. A for agree, D for disagree. If the phrase or the sentence in front of you, we use it for agreement, we will put A. If it's for disagreement, we will put D. So that's true. It's agreement. I agree with you. I would say the opposite. D, disagree. I would go along with that, which means I agree with you. I am completely against, which is I disagree. I am not so sure. Again, disagree. I could not agree more. I couldn't agree more, which is A. I agree with you. I agree with, of course, this is very clear for agreement. I don't agree or I disagree. Again, disagreement. That's not always true. Again, disagreement. I disagree with you. You are right. So you agree with him or her. I suppose so, which is I agree. I don't think so. Disagreement. I disagree. And exactly this is this is a agreement, of course. Exactly. I agree with you. So we need to complete this conversations with the expressions that we had in exercise 1. So feel free to take some screenshots and keep it with you in order to complete the sentences. Sorry, to complete the conversation. Okay, so as you can see, it's a conversation between Walid and Fadi. Have you finished revising for the English test? Fadi, yes, I revised with Tariq at his house last night. It's easier to revise with other people, isn't it? Isn't it? Walid? No, I would say the opposite. So he disagrees here. I work better alone. He prefers to work alone. I write the words down, cover them, and try to remember them. It's a good way to learn vocabulary. Fadi, I suppose so. So, which means he agrees with him. I suppose so, but why don't you draw pictures of the words? You can remember them really well if you do that. I am not so sure. I'm not so sure يعني مش متأكد قوي. But that's probably because I cannot draw very well. How do you practice saying words if you work alone? I listen to the word online and then repeat it. It's very easy. You are right. It is easy and you know the word is said correctly. Exactly, which means I totally agree with you. There are lots of good ways to remember things, aren't there? That's true. You must choose that is best for you. I couldn't agree more, and I couldn't agree more. That means I totally agree with you. Okay, let's move on to lesson 4, and we'll be talking about one of the interesting topics or types of schools that we have here in Egypt, especially in Alexandria. What do you think STEM subjects are at schools? So we will be talking about STEM schools. And think about school subjects which begin with the letters STEM. So can you guess what is S and TEM? Okay, so S for science, T for technology, E engineering, M math. Okay, so here you have this newspaper article about STEM subjects. And after reading this article, we need to think about the newspaper's opinion about them. So STEM subjects, because it's a bit longer article, so I brought like a part of it. And here is the main text. So STEM subjects, science, technology, engineering, and math were taught in schools long before the invention of the internet. However, we now live in a time when these subjects are more important than ever. This doesn't mean that music, history, languages, and other subjects are not important. However, understanding the so-called STEM subjects can be important can be an important bridge to a good job in the future. Many businesses do not have enough people with knowledge of the STEM subjects. For that reason, they are keen to give jobs to young people with these skills. In the past, STEM subjects were often seen as difficult. To change this idea, many businesses now run open days at which students can try building car engines, using a bike to make electricity, or playing computer games to practice math. Schools, too, are helping students to realize that these subjects can be both interesting and fun for boys and girls of all abilities. Schools might not have the equipment to build engines, but many now use different experiments and computers so that students can learn by doing things and not just by reading a text. This also helps critical thinking skills, which students can use in other subjects. It is said that 80% of jobs in the future will need students to have skills in the STEM subjects. Of course, we will also need artists, musicians, language teachers, and other experts, but skills in STEM subjects will help students to become the problem solvers and inventors of the future. Okay, so after reading this article, after reading this newspaper article about STEM subjects, what is the newspaper's opinion about them? If you notice that this article, it says that STEM subjects, which are science, technology, engineering, and math, are very important subjects for students who want to get good jobs and can be fun and interesting to learn. These are some of the advantages and disadvantages of schools that are teaching STEM subjects. Again, these are some of the ideas that you can use in order to write an essay, for example. So you can discuss the advantages and disadvantages of teaching STEM subjects. So some of the advantages, businesses need people with knowledge of STEM subjects. Schools are helping students to realize that the subjects can be interesting and fun. Students can learn by doing things, which helps with critical thinking skills. What are the disadvantages? Some of the disadvantages, they are not many in fact. STEM subjects are often seen as difficult. Not all schools have the equipment to do the experiments, so we need more equipment in some of the schools, for example. So these are some of the advantages. Of course, feel free to think about more advantages or disadvantages, and you can add more. What's more important when you give an opinion, whether in writing or in spoken text, try to justify or mention the reason why you are giving this opinion. For example, I think you should only be taught STEM subjects at school. I disagree. أنا معترضة. I disagree. I totally disagree with you. Other subjects are important as well. So she has a reason. So you need to mention the reason why you agree or disagree. This article, you can find it in your workbook page 101, exercise 1. Read this article about making mistakes and put the paragraphs in the correct order. So when you start to write an essay or an article about a certain topic where you can find or you think about the advantages and disadvantages, so you need to provide an introduction, a conclusion, and the body of the essay. It's divided into two parts, advantages and disadvantages. Okay, so let's have a look at the article and see which is which. Okay, so failure is necessary. Sometimes failure can make people work harder and do things better. As a consequence, they appreciate success more because it hasn't been easy for them. For instance, when football players lose a match, they are sad, but they learn how to improve and do better next time. Number B, people say that it is impossible to succeed without failure, and even the most successful people make mistakes. As well as this, many people believe in the importance of learning from your mistakes. Number C, in conclusion, although it is possible to have success without failure, from my point of view, it is better to fail sometimes in order to appreciate success more. Number D, on the other hand, success can make you feel positively about what you are doing, and it can give you a reason to keep trying. In addition, many people prefer to forget their mistakes so they can have good memories about the past. So we need to match these parts with the introduction, advantages, disadvantages, and then conclusion. So the introduction, of course, is number B. So number B is the introduction. Number 2, the advantages, is paragraph number A. Is talking about the advantages. On the other hand, number D, this is the disadvantage of failure. And on the other hand, because you are expressing the other opinion or the other side. Last but not least, when we say in conclusion, to sum up briefly, so you are finalizing your essay, so this is the conclusion. So this is one of the forms or one of the divisions you can, or an outline for an essay you can follow. All right, so now we move on to the translation. Choose the correct English translation. يجب إعطاء التعليم والمعلمين قدرا أكبر من الاهتمام، فهما الركيزتان الرئيسيتان اللتان تعتمد عليهما نهضة المجتمعات. So, number A, education and teachers should be given much more interesting because they are the two main bases on which the renaissance of societies depends. Number B, education and teachers should be given much more interest because they are the two main bases on which the renaissance of societies depends. Number C, education and teachers should be given much more interesting because they are the two main bases. Of course, this is main, not mean, on which renaissance of societies depends. Number D, education and teachers should be given much more interested because they are the two main bases on which renaissance of societies depends. Of course, the correct answer is number B. Education and teachers should be given much more interest. Okay, so we cannot say interesting or interested. Much more interest because they are the two main bases on which the renaissance of societies depends. So here قدر أكبر من الاهتمام. So we need to be given, they should be given much more interest. Okay. فيها حاجة حلوة، اصطف الطلاب على الجانبين لعمل ممر شرفي تعبيرا عن حبهم لمعلم اللغة الإنجليزية. It has something nice. The students lined up on both sides to make an honorary passage for the teacher of English. It has something nice the students lined up on both sides to make an honorary corridor to express their love for the teacher. Number C, it has something nice. The students lined up on every side to form an honorary corridor. Number D, it has something nice. The students lined up on both sides to make an honorary corridor to express their love for teacher of English. Of course, the correct answer is number D. It has something nice. The students lined up on both sides الطلاب على الجانبين to make an honorary corridor, not a passage, corridor, to express their love for the teacher of English. Okay, so now we've come to the end of today's session. If you have any questions, feel free to type in the chat, or you can leave a comment down below if you are watching the recording. Thank you so much. And this was Miss Iman Dahit, an English teacher. If you have any questions, feel free to post it in a comment down below if you're watching the recording, or you can type in the chat if you want.